one piece, but it might be a small piece, I'm not sure, of China's economic woes are U.S. corporations reducing their manufacturing footprint. But there's lots of other reasons that China's economy is struggling.
Yeah, I mean, like a simple one is like tourism is way down.
From abroad, you mean?
Yeah. God,
what about internal tourism? Like that's
most of their tourism is from Taiwan, Hong Kong, or Macau.
Because you need people with money to be the tourists.
Yeah, and I don't know about like within the own provinces, but it was like a change of like millions down to just tens of thousands.
Right, but also when you have domestic tourism, like you're moving money around, but you're not getting in the money from outside. So you need foreign tourists to have a thriving tourism industry, because that's the way to actually bring that new currency, those new yuan, into your country.
Well, so big picture, back in June, yes, that was last month. I can say back in June, the China's Bureau of Statistics.
It's August now.
Yeah. What did I say?
You said it's last month.
I said back in June.
Yes,
that's fine. You can say back in June.
Way back then. The Bureau of Statistics released a bunch of economic data, and I mean, first of all, we know that any data that comes out of China is a lie.
It's interesting because there was a CNBC article I was reading about the Biden executive order, and it treated the statistics like they were totally normal.
They did that during COVID too. Like, hey, China's doing so great. No one has died.
I mean, I
nowhere
think
else in the world is that
after a
happening.
while, there was like a lot of contextual information around that number. But
it was weird. Like even like when like it was clear what zero COVID was, and it, like people were starving in their apartments. Like even the New York Times was like, their COVID policies, while effective at first, or like
no,
they
I
were
mean
trying
the
to
New York
cover
Times'
their butts.
China policy is terrible. Like China coverage is
they
terrible.
did a report on the Biden executive order, and it really was like reading the People's Daily.
Like the framing in the first paragraph was essentially like Biden is upping his, confrontation with China by issuing this executive order.
Have all kinds of economic problems.
Yeah, so it's very much like you might as well just reprint the China Daily article, because that is the framing that the CCP wants, is that the U.S. is aggressing on China by doing this, when it's actually just, again, like you said, Chris, trying not to give like military technology to an authoritarian regime that says it is at war with us.
Do you think if those missiles had goatees, the New York Times would figure it out?
Maybe if the semiconductor fab plants in China had goatees.
Anderson, full screen, semiconductor, goatee. Thank you. I'm making you work this podcast. I'm sorry. So yes, economic numbers are very, like, even like the official ones are bad. So we know the situation is
But the funny
much
thing
worse.
that the CNBC article was like, China's growth, according to like the statistics, was only like 6.3%. And then it said, well, the U.S.'s growth rate was 2.6 or something. Yeah. And I was like, okay, that's very misleading.
Yeah, and that's very deceptive, because that seems like, oh yeah, we're being, unbiased. We're giving like this full picture. But no, that's not what they're doing. They're actually making things less clear.
Yeah. So anyway, Chris, continue with how terrible 6.3 is in the context of the
Well,
Chinese
so basically
economy.
the Chinese economy was shut down for 2-3 years because of zero COVID. The only economy they had was the COVID economy, which also racked up a lot of debt. I think the current statistics are that local debt is like $23 trillion. I mean, that's pretty crazy. But there was this idea, and I think this is also playing a part in like the Wall Street disenfranchisement of China. I don't know if that's the right word. I don't know if that is a word. I don't know what words are. But there was this idea that, once they open back up again, the economy is going to surge. And initially it seemed like there was a big upswing. Like suddenly people were going out to restaurants, going to movies. But then that just plummeted. And there was no massive rebound. And like that's pretty clear. So clear that the Chinese Communist Party can't even really lie about it. No, they're lying about it, but they're just not.
They're still massaging the numbers, but they can only massage them so far.
Yeah. So it's like this horrible death cycle that the Chinese economy is in, where particularly like youth unemployment is insanely high.
Officially, it's 21%, which
I think it's officially gone up to 23.
so even if it's 23, if it's actually 23, that's still
1 in 5.
But that's crisis level unemployment.
Yeah.
But if we assume
It's youth unemployment if we didn't
youth unemployment,
specify.
Okay. So that's not as bad as overall unemployment, but nonetheless, if it's what we're seeing is like, kids who graduate from college and they're, essentially being told by the party, like, go to college and study this and then you'll get a job. And this is like our promise to you, right? You just don't go against us. Don't go against the party and take this career path and you'll be okay. And now those youth are seeing like, actually, I just got my college degree and I've applied for 100 jobs and I have 0 job offers.
Well, let me just phrase it more simple than that. You have a bunch of angry young men who don't have jobs and can't find a wife. Yeah. I feel like if this were an episode of the Fall of Civilizations podcast, I would hear, and then the youths had, something. They'd be more clever than what I can come up with. But yeah, that is a huge crisis facing the party right now. You just have a bunch of unemployed, angry young men with no prospects, no future. And the Communist Party response to the youth unemployment is pretty bad. Like, youth in China were already like very cynical and depressed. Like, there was the lay flat movement, which was just about, like, everything's screwed, let's just lay flat. Or then there was the let it rot movement, just everything's falling apart, just let everything completely collapse. A couple movements like that. People, young people are not getting married, they're not having kids.
I mean, it's too expensive.
Yeah, they have no prospects.
I mean, like, if you're 24 years old and you don't have a job, or the best job you can get is like food delivery or something, you're going to have a hard time finding a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a spouse. Like, it's just.
Yeah.
I think there's also, we do not know exactly what the situation is in the countryside versus the urban.
Yes, because they don't keep those statistics are not kept.
So, like, if, you have people in Shanghai or Beijing, like, you might not be seeing just how bad it is versus, like, people who are, those are more highly educated people going for white-collar jobs, like, versus, like, if the factory jobs that had actually been like the backbone of like China's economy since the 90s, right? Like, they are all going away, and that upward mobility is no longer there for Chinese factory workers. Then you have like this whole other level of issues that, is not going to be addressed because that's less visible.
Yeah, and Xi Jinping's response has not been good. There's a lot of resentment because he said, well, he's going back to like the Cultural Revolution era. Hey, go to the countryside and work.
On what?
On the countryside.
I mean, I guess that's what he had to do as a kid.
It's true, he did. And look at him now. He's the president of China. But there was also a quote of him. He told people to just eat bitterness, which, it's specifically, I've heard some people in the West translate as eat grass. I know. It's, the Chinese turku. It's eat bitterness. It means, like, endure hardship.
Still endure hardship. Like, yeah, like, I mean, technically it's eat bitterness, but like, it just means.
It's like gird up your loins and pull yourself up by your own bootstraps.
I mean, but like, that's not an uncommon Chinese phrase.
Yeah, but also not this response any young people want to hear.
It sounds like he's kind of being like a Chinese dad in some ways, where he's like, oh, well, you got to suffer some hardship,
It builds character.
Yes, that kind of thing. Pull up bootstraps, etc. Yeah.
When I was your age, there was a famine. I murdered my best friend because he was a counter-revolutionary.
I walked to the countryside upward both ways in the snow.